Right, good morning, everyone. I will just go ahead and start. My name is Celina. I'm actually the English Product Specialist for Marshall Cavendish Education. Previously, I was actually working in Ministry of Education in Singapore, one of the top schools in Singapore. I spent 5 years there, total of 8 years in the teaching in Ministry of Education in Singapore. So anything that I share with you today is definitely based on my own experience, on top of the research that I've also conducted, based on studies that were shown for the STLLAR approach. So STLLAR, in a push by the Ministry of Education to raise the English standards in school, I will also give you like a historical background as to how Singapore came to become better in English. We didn't start off like that. I actually mentioned to Malika and Azad when they were here in Singapore last week that they were actually it was actually our National Day, and then there was a lot of talk about how we came to where we are today, what were the challenges faced, and how similar Kazakhstan is from us actually. So to share with you an idea, I'm pretty sure that you will have your own adaptation of my presentation and what it could mean for your country. So maybe keep an open mind. If you have questions, go ahead and ask. I'll be happy to answer them to the best of my abilities. Yep. So STLLAR is a word that you are hearing a lot of. What STLLAR actually means is the short form for strategies for English language learning and reading. So our main point is really the reading, and that helps with the language learning. So the whole idea is to have educators teach pupils how to use the language in real world scenarios, and beyond just looking at grammar and vocabulary, we are looking at how the English that the students learn in school can be applicable. So the national curriculum aims to develop the ability to speak clearly and confidently. So by reading and giving them opportunities to speak, they will be more confident. So not sure if you know, but we actually do without textbooks for the past maybe coming 15, 20 years. And the whole idea of STLLAR was, it's not that we don't have any books, we still look at storybooks or big books to help with this. It incorporates storytelling, role-playing, and different texts such as news articles. And it was at first piloted in some schools in 2006, and then it was extended to all primary schools in 2009.
Merci.
Okay, so today's agenda, we are going to talk about the Singapore approach, the STLLAR program, and then I'll consolidate what we've learned. Hopefully you can also give me some feedback on what you have learned or what you would like to know more about. Right, similar to Kazakhstan, where official languages are Kazakh and Russian, Singapore also had their official languages highlighted in the box above. The official language for the Chinese ethnic group was Mandarin. For Malay, Malay for the Malays, and Tamil for the Indians. So just like the other languages spoken in Kazakhstan, like German, Tajik, Tatar, Turkish, Ukrainian, Uzbek, Singapore started with many languages as well. So that, to me, is something that's very similar in our DNA. Singapore started with many languages and dialects in the 1965. It was interesting to see how language evolved throughout the years, where, for example, a language like Mandarin, 0.1% of Chinese used then, would become a frequently used language in textbooks and in marketplace. So what you realize here is that English is nowhere to be found, right? There's no English to speak of in 1965, and many people actually know that the national language of Singapore is actually Malay. we have our national anthem in Malay. So this is a speech by our founding father, Minister Mentor Lee Kuan Yew in 2004. He said that he was talking about the language policies that he made at that time. He decided that in 1965 that English was going to be Singapore's working language. So English was and still is the language of commerce. He was saying that it's of commerce, of science, technology, and international intercourse. So once English is the language of the government and of the workplace, every student must reach a certain level of competence in English. He needs this to gain his other knowledge in history, geography, chemistry, physics, and mathematics. Hence, the mother tongue had to be his second language. So if you saw the languages previously, all these languages became, the ones in the boxed up, Mandarin, Malay, and Tamil became the second language. So English became the first language. The reason being is because English remains the lingua franca of the world. This is a very recent article. There's this hidden bias of science universal language, right? Yet today, even though we say that we have a lot of scientists that wrote in German, in French, in Latin, still the most published scientific research is found in English. So scientists who want to produce influential, globally recognized work most likely need to publish in English. So I was also sharing with the group last week that I was reading different research articles, one of which was talking about the benefits of microlearning. The writer of the article was actually a professor in Taiwan. So he uses what we call traditional Chinese to write his research paper. So I was wondering if I could find an English version, because if I were to share it with the international audience, I would need something that where the language flows, right? So I actually went to look for his English version of his first research paper. And because I'm bilingual, I could I realized very quickly that there were a lot of things that he mentioned that were lost in translation in his English version, right? So the whole idea of getting our students or pupils, future pupils, to learn the English language is so that if they have something great that they have created or invented and want to tell the world, what is the communication language they would need to get the message across, right? We want our products to be global. We want it to speak volume, to represent our country, to represent what we are made of and all that. That communication process would still be most likely in English. So language initiatives in Singapore, you see that we have this thing called Speak Good English Movement. It's about a 2-week campaign every year. So it takes place in schools, in workplaces, in even in the public. You will see the Speak Good English Movement posters, right, on bus stops, in the train stations, right? So it's all to encourage Singaporeans or fellow Singaporeans to speak good English. So if you see on the left, the colorful box, you see that it says, let's be understood from Lakeside to London. Let's be understood from Eunos to Edinburgh, Somerset to Sydney, Newton to New York, Marsiling to Melbourne, Bayfront to Boston. So the first name, like Lakeside, Eunos, Somerset, Newton, Marsiling, Bayfront, those are all places in Singapore. I will call them like towns or suburbs in Singapore. And what they mean or really want to drive across the message is that let's be understood from these places all the way to international places like London, Edinburgh, Sydney, Boston, Melbourne, New York. So that was the idea of pushing the Speak Good English movement. We want to be understood. We want to be able to communicate on a global level. Then they came out with the same movement. They came out with a book, a narrative. This is about grammar rules. So it's like, let's speak good English. So it tells them what are the commonly used grammar that you need to look out for, whether you put the S or no S, whether you use past tense, present tense, using the correct pronouns, these are all in everyday speech. So, for example, in Singapore, when we speak, if you've heard of Singlish, it's actually the Singapore English. But, you know, I think Singlish is one way for Singaporeans to build rapport with each other. So you might have your own version of Kazakh English in future. You don't know that, right? So we have this phrase when we're asking someone what the time is, we say now what time. So it's because we speak English because we want to convey meaning very quickly and communicate an idea very quickly. So we go now what time. Actually, they scrape it off and say, no, you shouldn't be saying now what time. You should be saying what is the time. So this is just an idea of how we can speak better English in everyday life. That's the idea. Right, so the Singapore English Language Syllabus looks at CLLIPS for short. C is the contextualization. So it involves designing learning tasks and activities for students to learn language in authentic and meaningful context. So today's STLLAR approach is very relevant to this contextualization to get students to see everyday things and make use of language to actually talk about those everyday things that they do. For example, lessons will be planned around learning outcomes. There will be a theme, a type of text that students will use. It could be recount, it could be narrative, it could be procedural, like how do you make something, to help students use related linguistics and non-linguistic skills, grammar items, structures, and vocabulary appropriate. So while they are engaged in the authentic and meaningful context, they will build the vocabulary, the structure, the nuances in language, the phonics, all within that context. So also considering purpose, audience, context, and culture. For students actually this week on Tuesday and Wednesday, our PSLE, which is our grade 6 students, PSLE meaning primary school leaving examination, kids just went through their national exam for oral. Oral is the speaking component. When they speak or when they make conversations, the thing that we teach our students is PAC, which is purpose, audience, context. So the whole idea of the STLLAR program, on top of reading, was to encourage our pupils to speak and build on their communication skills. So PAC was something that is drilled into their head to make sure that they remember PAC every time I ask them, oh, so what is your hobby? So they think, what's the purpose of me answering the question? Who is the audience that I'm speaking to? Am I speaking to my teacher? Am I speaking to my fellow classmates? So the audience will determine what sort of communication you would do and the context, like what is the context of this question? Am I in a party and someone is asking what is my hobby? Or am I in a formal setting where someone is asking me my hobby, right? Learner-centeredness, we want to put the learner at the heart of the learning and the teaching to empower them and strengthen their language development, all within the walls of effective pedagogy, of course. Learning-focused interaction is very similar to learner-centeredness. If the learner is at the center of the learning, there's more learning to take place, and that's where the interaction happens. So you provide students with a rich and responsive learning environment for communication. So it gives them courage to speak up, and it also allows them to think of questions for them to think about. If anyone were to ask them something, they be able to answer and be more confident. It promotes collaboration and rapport among learners from different backgrounds, fostering positive relationships between the students. So this can be accomplished by creating a positive classroom culture. For example, building trust among the students. So in STLLAR program, there's this thing called class writing. So in class writing, the teacher really just writes what the student contributes. So sometimes the grammar might not be right, but the other students who actually know that the grammar is wrong will not be correcting each other. We are trying to foster a positive learning environment where students are allowed to make mistakes and the process of making mistakes is to help them, not to bring them down. So those are all positive kind of classroom culture that we're looking at. And then integration of different skills. So we're not only looking at grammar and vocabulary, that's just one way of looking at language. There's also receptive skills, productive skills, and one set of skills building on one another, using text. The text that we are talking about will be print, non-print, all this to provide different perspective and meaningful connections. Process orientation. So it's learner-centered, but if we just throw the question to a learner, the learner will most likely not know what to do. So there's we are also focused on the process of the learning. So at lower levels, like in primary grade 1 to maybe up to 3, the teacher does a lot of modeling, a lot of scaffolding, and a lot of differentiating for different groups of students within the class. So a teacher could enter the classroom, maybe assess the students based on how they learn and how quick they pick up different things. And based on that, they then think about scaffolding or differentiating the learning. So the same activity can lead to the same outcome, but the process is different. So for a higher progressing student, that learning could be accelerated. But for low progressing students, they probably need a lot more scaffolds so that you can guide them and lead them to the learning outcome that they have. And finally, it is spiral progression. This is something that you will hear for English, also for math, also for science. Science is divided into lower and upper primary, lower block and upper block. So spiral progression is like they revise and revisit certain skills and grammar items, structures, types and forms of text at a lower level all the way to the higher level. So with each level that increases, they will be exposed to something more difficult. So it helps them when they graduate, they will be able to read articles that have these kind of grammar structures, types and forms of text. So it increases the level of difficulty. That's called spiral progression. So in considering how our students learn grammar in grade 1 versus grammar in grade 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, do they have to learn everything every year? Or is there something that they can learn on the first year and then continue that on the third year and on the 5th year? So these are things that we consider. Right? Let's go straight to today's STLLAR program walkthrough. So the STLLAR program, I call it 1.0 because it actually ran from the years 2010 to 2020. If you are aware, Singapore actually made some tweaks and changes in their syllabus in 2020. The STLLAR program 2.0 is actually something new. But the crux of it, or like the change in syllabus, is probably about 5%, that really the STLLAR program is still something that they look towards, right? So how is language taught? There is 2 different approaches. There's the natural approach, which is the whole. We give students the entire story. And then there's the part, which is the structural approach. So these two approaches needs to work hand in hand in order for students to learn. So you have to always go from natural to the structure to the natural to structure to natural. It's just how students will learn better for English. So you see that very evident in the STLLAR approach. Right, the 3 teaching strategies in the STLLAR model are what we call shared book approach, or in other articles you might know it as shared reading experiences. We have the modified learning experience approach, MLEA, and we have learning centers. So this is just a brief walkthrough of what it is. I will go one by one with you what they actually mean. So shared reading experiences is the first thing that comes up. Children will read the storybook with the teacher and engage in oral discussions with the teacher and peers. So again, it's a very safe environment where students can and are allowed to say anything and everything that's related to the theme. Of course, if it's not related, it's for the teacher to manage. After they have done a few storybooks, they will actually move on to shared writing experiences. So this is more of based on the theme that they have read the books from, also the structure to which the book was written. These are exposure and experience for students to then do writing experiences. So the teacher will model the writing using children's language. Just now I mentioned that when they are doing the writing, students can say whatever they want related to the story, and the teacher will just write it as it is without correcting them. Then after that, students will learn to write in groups, and then they will write independently. So all this is the scaffolding process to help students to write better. Finally, there's language activities in learning centers. The teacher prepares mini lessons based on specific needs of children. Again, the children will be tiered. This is where differentiated learning takes place to prepare them for reading and writing activities like grammar, vocabulary, recognition, decoding skills, spelling, etc. Right? So this is the flow, 1, 2, 3. To give you an idea, each book, the step 1, each book is about 2 weeks. So teachers will spend about 2 weeks per book for the shared reading experiences, or what we call shared book approach, SDA. Then for number 2, the shared writing experience, it probably takes place once every 2 to 3 books that they have read. So this happens maybe once a month. So they will do more writing, and maybe accomplish about 10 individual writings a year, depending on whether or not the other writing tasks they have to fulfill. And finally, for the third one, learning centers, this only happens once every term. Every term takes the duration of about 8 to 10 weeks. So learning centers will take place every 8 to 10 weeks. If the teachers find that it is too much, they can decide maybe just 2 learning centers each year. They can do that as well. It depends on how well the student receives the learning center lessons. If they are really good and productive in those lessons, then yes, I think you should, and it's better to learn where students can help each other at their own level. Right, so shared book approach. The process, there are 4 processes. There's the pre-reading, first reading, second reading, and after reading. I'm going to show you a video for the pre-reading, first reading, and second reading. And then we will talk about after reading after that. All right.
Shared book approach.
Let me know if you cannot hear.
The shared book approach is used with stories with local context and content that relate to children's experiences. General goals for shared book approach. The general goals of the shared book approach are to provide an enjoyable experience with books, encourage children to talk, provide oral English models for both book and spoken language, and provide further language practice opportunities when the story is reread. Let's look at how the shared book approach is carried out. Tuning in song. The teacher begins the lesson with a song. This prepares the children for shared reading and introduces some language structures orally before the big book is read aloud to the children.
Scamper, scamper through the forest, scamper, scamper through the forest.
Introduce the big book. The teacher invites the children to talk about the cover page of the big book. She draws on the children's prior knowledge to help them relate to the situations and characters in the story. The teacher also asks questions to help the children to predict the story.
Wow. What do you see in this picture?
I see Grandpa, Grandma.
You see Grandpa?
And Grandma.
You see Grandpa?
And Grandma.
And Grandma?
First reading. The teacher asks questions about the illustrations and encourages the children to predict what happens before she reads the text aloud.
Honey, can you tell me where is he now?
Bedroom.
Very good. A bedroom. How do you know it's a bedroom, honey? What is that? What are they doing here? They are... Why are they running so fast? Scamper, scamper through the forest. Now, look at them. Where are they now? Oh, Viewers said a very good thing because they are happy to be back home with their mom. Now, look at their mom. What do you think their mom is saying to them?
The teacher points to the words fluidly while reading to provide visual aid, relate sound to print, model the pace of reading, and show the direction of reading print.
Mango was no longer hungry. He had eaten a brown circle. What's a brown circle? A white square and a red triangle. But this was cake, buttery cake. So he would eat it anyway.
Second reading. The teacher rereads the book straight through without stopping to model fluency in reading. The teacher encourages the children to read along with her.
A white square was on a plate. It was a sandwich.
We hope that you have found the shared book approach useful in developing your children's language and literacy skills.
All right, does anyone have any questions for the pre-reading, first reading, and second reading before we move on?
Yes, we have some questions.
Yep, go ahead.
So when the teacher is sitting and showing the lines of reading, as I understood, the students don't have any books, don't have any readings in their hands. If I'm right or
Yes.
not?
Yes, that's correct. You see that the students don't actually have the books in front of them. If they have the books, they would be distracted.
But if the students can't see the book,
So the idea is to do a big book. So either that or you use the digital version where there is the screen to help you run through the big books with the students. So if there's no big books, you can always use electronic ways to help you to make sure that they can see the book and the pictures.
okay, thank you.
No problem.
Celina, how many students would you have in a class?
So in grade 1 and 2 in Singapore, we have about 30 students in each class.
Wow.
30, yeah. When we go beyond grade 3, the number increases to 40 students in the class, all the way up to grade 6. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes,
But there are special permissions when if the student is because when we hear the students and their grades are not good, they will actually open a special class for the last class, and the last class is usually about 20, 25. But that's very rare.
Right, but that makes the teacher's job very challenging in terms of differentiating, right? Different
Yes, that's right.
abilities.
Yeah. So for some classes, learning centers work better for them. So because they get to learn in their groups. So if there's a group of 30, I group them into groups of 3 groups of 10, right? So then I create stations within my classroom, and then I get them to rotate. I've already prepared the materials in advance, so I get them to rotate, and they actually enjoy that type of learning more than if they were to do like the big book reading all the time during the class. Yeah, so all of these are strategies, and then you can look at how you can picture it in your classroom. How would you want to carry it out?
Yeah, thank you very much.
No problem. Malika, were you saying something?
Yes, when we went to Singapore, we saw 40 students and from grade 1 to grade 6, and there were 40 students in the classroom, and they were doing fine with one teacher with no assistant at all.
Yeah, so I think in my experience as a teacher, teaching classes of 30 and 40, the main thing that a teacher needs to have is classroom management. If you can manage your class, you can teach anything and everything, and the students will be fine. So typically, when we talk about classroom management, that will take place when you first encounter the student at the start of the academic year. Take your time with the classroom management, get them used to your how you teach, because students are very adaptive as well. I will tell you that English teacher does it this way, but my math teacher does it that way. So they are very aware of how different teachers work. That's because of the classroom management that happens within the classroom. So if there are certain standards or certain rules that you want to bring across, like sometimes when the first big book reading, maybe they are all over the place. They sit on the floor, they are very distracted, they are looking, pulling, touching their friends and all that. So there are things that you can enforce to them. Like if you see in the video, they have this tuning in song. When I enter the classroom, I will play. When I want to start the lesson, I won't say anything. They will greet me, they will sit down, they will be expecting me to do something. What is Miss Lee? My name is Miss Lee. What is Miss Lee going to do today? So I will turn on the tuning in song, and I will tell them that the first time I play the tuning in song is to get you started for my English class. So the first time I play it is the time for you to come to the floor. The second time I play it, you should be singing along with the song already. Then once the song is done, I can start with my big book. So that's how I get them ready for my lesson. So it doesn't matter if they had a Chinese lesson or physical education lesson previously, they were running around sweating. That doesn't matter. They know that the moment I play the song, they have to come to the floor. So that's an indicator. So all these are classroom management skills for the class of 30 or 40. Yeah. Let me move on to after reading.
Excuse me, Celina, there is one more question if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yes,
anyone?
go ahead.
Hello, good morning.
Good
Thank you
morning.
very much. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with us. Here, I would like to add, we are going to face a problem with our parents because for first reading and second reading, we need, actually, I have been working in this program for so many years, and class teacher cannot manage with 30 or 25 students to teach all of them at once. There will be so many different learners. I understand here classes divided into so many centers, and children are just moving around the centers, and teachers working with one group, the next day with second group. And plus, we were relying on parents. We were sending homeworks. We were sending books, small books to read at home. So parents should help. But here in Kazakhstan, we cannot rely on our parents because most of them they don't know how to read. They don't know English. So everything will be here on teacher's shoulders. So how we can do, okay, for pre-reading, we have seen in the video, teacher is dealing with a picture showing, then big book picture showing, then story sacks are going, then in the around the class, you are doing the first reading technique, yeah? Then second reading, and after reading, we need to ask parents to help. So how we can do. And plus,
So,
here we are not using English in daily basis, like children in Singapore. So the process is going to be slow.
Yes, definitely the process will be slow. The shared book approach, all 4 steps, pre-reading, first reading, second reading, and after reading actually all happens in the classroom. It does not, the parents will not be bringing it home. So pre-reading, they will take the book and the students will start to predict what the story is. Okay, if you give them a picture of a cat, then you will ask them, what is this? Then they will tell you this is a cat. So pre-reading is more to get them to think about the vocabulary words that will come out in the story. So all this pre-reading, first reading, and second reading actually happens within 45 minutes of class time. Yeah. So first reading is to get them to do a lot of prediction. So you flip open the book, the first page, you don't start reading first. You start to ask them, what do you see in this picture? What do you think this person is doing? So the students who know how to read, they will already tell you certain, because they know how to read, so they will tell you they'll predict the story in a certain manner. Then you ask them, what do you think will happen next? Can you predict? So all this vocabulary will come out at the first reading. After you're done with first reading, the teacher will close the book and start reading again from the front cover. The teacher will use the pointer because you want to teach them to read smoothly the words. So the teacher will read the entire story without stopping. So the second reading, the teacher will just read the storybook like how you would read. You won't be asking questions anymore. You read the whole thing because the students have already understood what is happening in the story from the first reading. The second reading is just to get them to read the entire thing as a whole. Then after reading, we will ask them certain questions or do certain things. So all this actually happens in the classroom. And usually if a class runs for an hour, the first 45 minutes we'll be doing this. The last 15 minutes, if they have small books or if they have some writing assignments to do, that's when they will do in the classroom. Yeah. So when I was teaching lower primary in Singapore, I did not give them any homework to bring home. For students who are learning English in your classroom, also we are aware that they can only learn English in your classroom. So that's where we maximize the time of learning within the classroom so that they don't have to bring their homework home. They only get homework for English beyond grade 4 onwards. Then they will have homework. They don't usually have homework. They can complete it in the class. And because you have different abilities of students, so that you know that the higher ability students, you just have to eyeball them. The higher ability students, you can actually leave them alone to do their work, on and off, go and check. When they are doing their work, walk around the classroom, usually the slower students or the low progressing students will need your help. So that's where you help them within the classroom. Yeah, and then you realize that sometimes the fast progressing ones are very quick. So what I get them to do is, okay, you go and coach the one that is not as fast as you. Why don't you help out? And then I will go and listen in and see whether the high progressing one is that student just giving answers or that students actually teaching the low progressing one. So there are a few ways to go about doing it, all within classroom time.
Thank you so much.
No problem. All right, so after they're done with pre-reading, first reading, second reading within the class, after reading, we can ask them some questions, or if there's time within the classroom, we can get them to act it out. We can get them to act out the story, what happened in the story. Maybe this student will be the cat, this student will be the mother, this student will be the grandfather, and you get them to do a little bit of script or speech and drama kind of activity within the classroom. So you can collectively create a script for students to act out or emphasize on the feelings and thoughts of each character. This helps to build their language when they are doing their writing. Eventually, they will know how each person feels, etc., etc. Explore another way of telling the same story through craft work or dress up or props, etc. The question part is the easier part because every time you start your English lesson, you will do the reading of the book. So shared book approach, the 4 steps, right? it happens for that 2 weeks. Every time you start the English lesson, you get them to read the book, because what you are going to learn or what they are going to learn is something related to the book. So always start your class reading the book, so they will read again and again and again and again. Yeah, and in Singapore we practice, if you are reading the current book, and if the students want to read a book that they have read last time, we can take out the book again to do more reading. Yeah, so you can ask them questions after reading, like what would you do if you were the main character? Why would you do that? So you will have different responses, because this is a personal application question. What would you do if you were the main character? Or if you could change any part of the story, which part would it be? So I'm not saying that your first English reading lesson you do this. I'm saying that as you get to know the students more and more, you can get them to think about questions that are beyond just what was given in the book. Can you think of a different ending to the story is another way as well. Right. Then after they are done with the reading, they will move on to the writing, which is the modified language experience approach. So what the students do following the shared book reading, it comprises of a shared experience. So the class will have a shared experience that is linked to the big book that they are reading now. So some of these experiences include maybe the life cycle of a butterfly. So we actually get them to grow the butterfly, the caterpillar. So you see, we actually got them a butterfly kit, and then they watch what happens to the caterpillar every day for the next 2 weeks until it becomes a butterfly, and then they will release the butterfly in the garden. So what the students do is they observe, can do drawing. Caterpillar is one of them, and then they will imagine the caterpillar as a monster. What would the monster look like? This is their group writing. You see that all hands on deck. We get all the students involved, and you see more closely, the handwriting is different, which means everyone needs to write at least one sentence. You realize the handwriting is different because they are supposed to collaborate on the writing together. These shared experiences will provide the context and content for students to practice the 4 language skills. Students will think about it, talk about it, read about it, write about it, as they are guided to make connections between what is happening and what they are going to write. So it centers around personal experience and is based on vocabulary and grammar by the students. So it's very learner-centered, and it also aligns with the other shared approach, while they integrate the reading, writing, speaking, listening all into one. So there are a few things that there are for MLEA, there's 3. MLEA 1 is the class writing. MLEA 2 is the group writing. And MLEA 3 is the individual writing, with the aid of the teacher, who will then write what they say as the class writing. And after they are done with the writing, they actually do some editing. So for example, they write, I don't care. But in writing, in English writing, we don't use contractions like don't. We actually say do not. So that's where they will then edit. They will correct what they have said earlier. So it helps students when they are in their own groups doing different things. This is for MLEA. Right, let me stop share. I actually want to, this is a students making their own hipster prata and writing about their experience. So prata is a dough, it's a type of dough. It's a type of Indian food actually, where students, it's very interesting because the school actually got the people who made prata into their school, and actually got them to engage in an experience where students get to see how the prata is made in front of their eyes, get to eat it. So that's all part of the experience. I'm not sure what kind of experiences you can offer to your students in Kazakhstan, but it can be something that's cultural. That's the idea. All right, let me show you the video. The video is on Facebook. That's why I couldn't. Okay, there's no sound to it, but you can just watch. All right, so this is the primary 2, which is our grade 2, English MLEA Prata on the spot thing that one of the schools in Singapore did. So this is in the school canteen. The students actually get to see from this shop called Casuarina Curry. The prata is really quite good. I go there sometimes. And then they bring in someone to actually do the prata flipping. Then there's one guy that does the flipping, then another guy that does is on the grill, turning the prata pieces over until they are golden and crispy and brown. And as he's demonstrating, he's also explaining. There's no sound to this video, so you're really just watching the video. So once it is golden brown, they will actually put it and then they will do this action of smashing it to make it more fluffy. And then that's when students will eat it. They can eat it with curry. There are different types of curry, or they can eat it with sugar or sugar and curry. So there are different ways of eating prata. So that's the experience that they get within the school. So it's this entire activity that they engage themselves in. Some will use their spoon and fork to eat. Some will use their hands to eat, just like how an Indian person would do. Okay, so I hope you find that video interesting because I find it very interesting actually. Right, so let me go back to my presentation. Right, so the students were actually going to write about their experience. So we talk about MLEA 1, 2, and 3. 1 is the class writing. 2 is the group writing. 3 is the individual writing. So we are scaffolding it for them. So for the sake of the experience and in class, after this experience, the teacher is doing the writing with the students, we will get them to write a recount, like a personal recount, like what happened like this morning or last week. So they could ask questions like, do you know what is prata? So when you write, you need to kind of explain what prata is. Not many people know what prata is, so you have to explain that prata is an Indian cuisine. You can eat it with sugar, you can eat it with curry. There are different types of curry. So there are a few things that students can write about within the classroom, and the teacher can get them to contribute their ideas. How is it made? What did the man do with the dough? He smashed it, he flipped it, and he flipped it high into the air. How did it taste? And how did we feel about it? So that is the class writing, MLEA 1. Then group writing, students will think about how they would want to make prata. Like, what is a hipster prata? Because we talk about hipster, right? Hipster means something that is cool. It's going to be very popular among people of their age. Like, it's going to be very popular among the primary school children. So that's hipster prata. What ingredients will you put in a hipster prata? Because the prata that we eat in Singapore, we have many different types of ingredients in them. Sometimes we put cheese, sometimes we put garlic, sometimes we put different ingredients in there. So it's up to the students' creativity and the group's creativity. They will think about, okay, what kind of prata do we want to make? What ingredients will we add? How do you think it will taste? Will it taste sweet? Will it taste salty? And how does that make the students feel about that? Once they have done the class writing and the group writing, they will then move on to the individual writing. They write on their own. And the topic to them would be, how do you make a delicious prata for your father or your mother or your grandfather or your grandmother or your teacher? So now they will think about personal experience. What makes the prata delicious? ingredients did I use? What makes me think that my father would like this prata? Maybe because he likes sweet things. He has a sweet tooth, so he would like to eat prata with sugar, or prata with sprinkles, or the prata with ice cream, something like that. So this is how the teacher scaffolds the writing experience. This is just another example of students actually making ice cream during their English lesson. So through this authentic learning experience, students make the procedural text, like the text is like a cookbook. How to make ice cream. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do that, right? So once they have gone through that process, they will know how to write a procedural text. They follow the steps in text and work together and make their own ice cream. So there's a lot of teamwork that's involved. The whole process is scaffolded for the students to learn cooperatively and in their mixed ability groups. So once they create the ice cream, they do a writing with the class, they do a group writing, and then they do individual writing. All right, any questions for MLEA before I move on to learning center?
Now we can move on.
Okay, great. So we have
Wait,
learned.
wait a second,
yeah,
sorry. We have one question.
no worries.
I guess the class writing or group writing should be associated with some kind of trip. When they will come back from trip, teacher is supposed to ask questions about the trip, and child will start. That's called individual writing, right? And
Yeah.
there will be no spelling check, I guess.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. No,
So
no
for the
spelling check, and I think this moment should be a little bit clarified because in our country we are still checking spellings, and no marking as well, and it should be corrected with the same pen color. Like if child write in blue, teacher supposed to write in blue, or the how to say, some kind of comment should be written down, right?
Yes. So for class writing, because we are writing it as a class, so the teacher will write what the students say on the board on big pieces of paper. So the teacher will write whatever the students say. Once they're done with the writing, then we say, okay, let's check if we have any mistakes. Then we'll change the color pen. It doesn't have to be red. It could be black, it could be purple, it could be any other color. Then we get the students to say, do you spot any mistakes? Let's look at the mistakes together and then let's correct them. So that's for class writing. Then group writing, they are given the paper to write. Once they are done writing, they will display it for other classmates to read what they have written. And then the teacher will also do some corrections on the spelling. If the students say, oh, Miss Lee, I think that one is spelled wrongly, it should be spelled like that, then we're like, oh, okay, yeah, let's change it. So we don't change it to in red color. We don't use red color for MLEA at all, if that makes sense. It's so that we can encourage students to write. We're not going to kill their joy in the process of it. Then for individual writing, they will write in a book, right? So the book, right, they will write it on the right side of the page. So if they write 4 pages, they will write 4 pages on the right side. So what the teacher does is use pencil and do the corrections on the left side. The teacher will say, okay, what you wrote, you should change it to this. So the teacher will write the wrong answer and the correct answer on top. And what the student does is the student will, once they get back their writing, they will erase the mistake that they make and then just correct the spelling, so that at the end of the day, their MLEA writing will be a perfect piece that is written by them. Is this information helpful for you? That's how we do it. So it's quite similar to what you say, like if they write it in pencil, we will use pencil to make changes as well.
Thank you. That was informative.
No problem. All right, let me move on. I'm aware of the time as well. So the language skills learned in both the shared book approach and modified learning experience approach, SB and MLEA, are also reinforced in the learning centers. So in the learning centers, the activities are planned and differentiated for the students. Again, if you think that this is too much, you only want to do it twice a year, that's fine, that's completely fine. It's just changing things up within the classroom for them to do different things, to learn, to reach the same outcome, which is to learn English better. So there will be opportunities for them to practice and study language in smaller parts, where there is phonics, grammar, vocabulary, spelling, punctuation, all weaved into the whole and the part of learning English. So they will have 3 centers. It happens, again, I mentioned that it happens every 10 weeks or so, after some books are completed. So at the listening center, what the students do is they have the audio recording of the books that they have already read in class. And then they will listen to the book, the audio file, and they will flip the book as they are reading. So it helps them it gives them a model of how they can pronounce certain words. Then there's this part here, there's the word study center. Word study center is when they read other storybooks that are not part of the English syllabus. We give them books that they are of their level. When they read those books, they will have words that they don't know, or words that we give them some words and we ask them, okay, is this a verb or is this a noun? If it's a verb, use the red color card to write verb. If it's a noun, use the yellow color word to write the nouns. So they will learn different nouns and verbs. And then in the word study center, they actually form sentences using their cards. So the noun followed by a verb. So John sleeps. So they make a sentence like that. So it's to teach them the structure of a sentence made up of different words. And then reading is just for them to do review. Like you ask them to read the book, and then you ask them, so what do you learn about the book? Or which is your favorite? Who is your favorite character and why? Would you recommend this book to someone, to your friend? Why or why not? So these are all questions that students will write. For the lower ability students, like the students who are not very good at writing, we give them boxes to tick. Did you like the story? Yes. Will you share this story with someone else? Yes. Who is your favorite character? Then they will take the name, or they'll write just one word. This is to scaffold the learning, so not doing the same thing at every station. Yeah. And there are actually another 3 teaching strategies for the STLLAR model. This is for upper primary. In Singapore, it is from grade 4, 5, and 6. When they are better in their language, then we get them to actually use English to learn knowledge. That's the whole idea. So STLLAR program, there's the lower primary, the one that I just told you about, and there's the upper primary. So this upper primary part, right, they have what we call supported reading, where the teacher will do, there's a bridge between reading aloud and independent silent reading. So like we give them a story, some parts the teacher will read aloud, some parts they will do silent reading. So it will give students the opportunity to make predictions. So basically what they have learned previously, now they are doing it independently. The strategy is used to usually carried out for narrative, any story type of text or information text. Then we have the KWL, which is what you know, what you want to know, and what you learn. What do you learn from this? So this is usually used for non-fiction text, such as information reports. So this strategy helps students to, let's say the topic is on sharks. What do you know about sharks? What do you want to know about sharks? What do you learn about sharks from the story that you just read? So this is the KWL. This is a further step after they are done with the earlier parts of STLLAR. This is the second part of STLLAR. So the teachers will guide pupils to organize, access, and remember information. It helps students to follow a logic of information. How is information presented? Also tells them that, you know, if you want to write an information report, the first part you need to give me an introduction about sharks. Maybe the second paragraph you tell me what sharks eat. The third paragraph you want to tell me how sharks behave, or what is their family structure like. So these are all ways that students, if in future they want to write information report, which is something that we aim for students to do, if next time they become brilliant scientists, we want them to write research reports, right? So all this is a logical flow of information that we are trying to train in our students. And finally, retelling is a reading comprehension. It gets students to interpret meaning from the whole text to individual words and phrases. So it helps students to, so after they have read a storybook, we ask them, okay, retell me the story in your own words. So this part here will allow them to think about vocabulary that they can use. So it helps them create their own words. It gives them a lot of opportunities to think about, to make meaning of the text and share that understanding with their friends. So, oh, this is how you understood the story. This is how I understood the story. So we give them a lot of opportunities for discussion. So this, again, I repeat, this STLLAR program, 3 teaching strategies is for after they are very good at the first one and they are more matured. I would suggest grade 5 or grade 6 in Kazakhstan when they are more matured in their reading. Assuming they started in grade 1, this is something that you put in at grade 5 or grade 6 where they are more independent in their reading. Right, so there are actually benefits that they discovered in some articles, in some research papers, that the PSLE, which is our primary school leaving examination for grade 6 students, they actually received a higher percentage of that were eligible for secondary school. So because of the STLLAR program, a lot of our grade 6 students actually moved on to grade 7, a higher percentage of them as compared to previous years. So the STLLAR program, along with other initiatives introduced by schools and MOE, has contributed to pushing our students into the next grade level, which is the secondary school. So these are all research articles that actually prove all this data. Right, so we were talking about language transformation earlier, about the 1965, and then learning all these languages, right? Then this part here is throughout the years, it is interesting to see how the languages change within the homes. So the language used in homes actually serve as an invisible policy that shape the use of language in society. So what you realize is that in 2020, for about 50% of the households used, I'm saying that this will happen in years. Even for Singapore, it happened over many years. It's not something that happened overnight. So because you are at the forefront of the English language in Kazakhstan, you also need the patience to see this through in the coming years, that it will happen as well. Right? So what does so it turns out that English 50%, Mandarin was like about 30% of them, and then Chinese vernaculars are actually our dialects, our different like Cantonese, Hokkien, Teochew. All these are our Chinese vernaculars. There's Tamil and Malay. We realized that that only happened in 2020. So we have come a long way. What does this mean for Kazakhstan? Multilingualism is and can be an advantage to its people, especially when the right language is made mandatory for all citizens of the country. Now, I was also sharing with the Kazakh group that you realize that the Chinese vernaculars, which is basically our culture, you realize that it went from 74.4% to 8.7%. This is something that we have to accept, that this percentage, as it drops, right, there's a little bit of erosion of culture. Yeah, I was talking about how in the hospitals in Singapore, the young doctors have problem communicating with the aging population, the elderly people here, because the elderly people here speak Chinese vernaculars, but because the young doctors are trained in English and Mandarin, if the elderly does not speak English or Mandarin, they will have communication breakdown, and that becomes a problem for us as well. Yeah, so we were talking about 2020, and then STLLAR Program 2.0 was from the second part of STLLAR. it was from 2020 to 2030. So this 10-year syllabus will be STLLAR Program 2.0. It's really, at the heart of it, it's really still the same thing. It's about the practical use of English language, foster a love for language, language in a means of making and generating meaning and communication. And when we talk about text these days, this text is from a diverse source, because we also understand that students now use print, they use non-print, they use digital network sources, social media, etc. Language learning in the 21st century, we also enhance it with multiliteracies, like we talk about linguistic, cognitive, social, cultural, and developmental. So it deepens the understanding of the language. This is the step 2. Grammar and vocabulary are seen as resources. They are not we don't go into an English class and only teach grammar and vocabulary. Those are actually things that help students learn the language, but that's not all there is to English. So that's the part that actually students get really bored out by. So we teach them in a way that's integrated, so that they don't think that, oh, English is all about grammar and vocabulary only. It's all about rules, spelling rules, and they quickly lose interest. Yep. And the text with diverse themes, so they will broaden their worldview and connect to real-world issues. And it also aims to develop foundational language and literacy skills, offering a rich language environment that enables meaningful language use. So just to show you some of the achievements, reading was one of them. So the primary school pupils in Singapore actually second in global reading literacy study. And then when we look at the TIMSS and PISA, our students actually continue to excel in other subjects as well, like math and science. And for PEARLS in 2021, 2021, Singapore was actually the first in average reading achievement and scale score distributions. So I would say it is definitely credited to the STLLAR program that we were trying to push out. 2021 was at the tail end of STLLAR program 1.0. And last year, so geography is also one humanities subject that uses English. So the Singapore team actually placed first in the International Geography Olympiad. And finally, this one is about the English Proficiency Index. The Netherlands, Singapore, and Austria top the English Proficiency Index for globally. So this happened last year in November. The top 10 countries are Netherlands, Singapore, Austria, yeah, all you see here. So these are like evidence that in placing English at higher priority, it actually affects the generations after us. Yeah. So that's it. I will end here. If you have any questions, I have my email address there if you have any questions for me as well. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming down and listening to me, allowing me to share with you what I learned and my experience as well.
Thank you, Celina, for this wonderful, informative, and very interesting, engaging session. I think we have a kind of a paradigm shift here, because you might have not heard, but I heard lots of sighs and saying, oh, really? And the sounds of astonishment, especially when you show the results. Thank you so much. I hope, I'm positive that every teacher has something to carry home today. Just a piece of cake or just a piece of thought to take home. Thank you so much. And bye-bye.
Yeah, I'll see you when I see you again.
Yeah, I hope to see you again.
Have a good rest of your day and a good weekend ahead.
Thank you so much. The rest of the participants, we are going to see you in 15 minutes. We have a tea break for 15 minutes, and the next session will start in 15 minutes. I'm not going to turn off the this video, because we are going to just continue here.
All right, thank you. I'll make my move.
Thank you, Celina, again. Bye-bye.
Bye.